Well, welcome everyone to Future World Scotland. Lovely to see you all. Happy New Year to you and a very warm welcome. If this is your first time, very warm welcome to you. If you've been with us before over 2020, welcome back. Really looking forward to our learning journey over 2021 and sharing it with you all. I'm here with my co-organizer Donald, as usual, just a reminder that we do have a code of conduct. So in short, we just ask that you're all respectful to one another. We want everyone to have a great experience. If you're, from outside of Edinburgh, it's lovely to know where you're joining us from. So feel free to share that in the chat. We'll do the usual community shout outs at the end. And in terms of the Q&A, we'll facilitate that as usual using the chat. So if you do have any questions for our guest speaker this evening, feel free to drop them in the chat and prefix them with Q. So it's easy for me and Donald to spot them and sift them. And just to say, I do seem to have developed some sort of chest congestion. So hopefully I won't start a fit of coughs before I finish this intro. And with that, I'm delighted this evening that we're joined by none other than Gunther Verheyen. Gunther's well known to many of us. He calls himself an independent Scrum caretaker, which I love. He's been kind of working with Scrum since as far back as 2003. And he's also collaborated with none other than Ken Schwaber, so one of the original kind of co-authors of Scrum. He's also written a couple of books, so I do have this wonderful text, which I think is a very enjoyable read on the framework. And this evening, he's going to be sharing his insights on how we humanize the workplace using Scrum, which I think is very topical given the kind of virtual world that we currently inhabit and all the challenges that brings. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Gunther to share his thoughts. Welcome, Gunther. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much, Saf, and Donald also as a co-organizer. Thank you again for the invitation. I do hope everybody had some good holidays. What a strange year we've had. And let's not be optimistic about the rest of this year. Try to be some sort of realistic. You never know what's going to happen. So we'll probably all get vaccines at some point in time. They're working very hard in Belgium to get that done. So I live in Belgium, in the beautiful city of Antwerp, which is quite empty now. Probably as empty as Edinburgh is, like where South lives, or maybe London. I don't know. I see people from a lot of places, so really, really great. So I'm really happy because kicking off sort of the new year for the future of work with the topic of humanization, I believe it couldn't have been more spot on, because probably it's sort of my belief that the future of work is probably in humanizing the workplace or re-humanizing the workplace as you wish. I've also made a little preparation to take you guys through that. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat window. I'm probably not going to be able to look at it, but at least Sat and Donald as facilitators will have a look. And if they see some really, really cool question popping up, they're absolutely free to try to gently interrupt me and get some question in. I'm not too big of a fan of Q&A sessions by the end, because that is waterfall thinking. First speaking and then Q&A. Let's mix things a little bit, like, you know what, like concurrent engineering or concurrent development and iterative incremental thinking. So let's try to live that a little bit. So humanizing the workplace with Scrum. Let me share what I've prepared. So really grateful to be here. I don't know if anybody saw that, but Donald also showed the book that we published last year, the 97 things every Scrum practitioner should know. Donald had it as a Christmas gift, and he doesn't seem too unhappy over it. So it must be something good about it. So you might want to have a look. So I hope you all can see my screen. So we're now virtually in Edinburgh somewhere, which is beautiful. I've never been there in real life actually. So hopefully someday I'll be able to go there. Seems to be a really beautiful city, beautiful castle, right, Sav? And if I'm not mistaken, sort of also the financial heart of Scotland, where all the big banks and insurers and whatever companies are, right? So must be a wealthy city too. So the perspective for me to this talk is what it means to humanize a workplace, meaning it's sort of my view on things, what it means for me to humanize a workplace with Scrum. And sort of in another way of looking at it, sort of that people aspect of Scrum, or the people perspective to Scrum. So let me go into that a little bit. And like Sat rightfully said, I started calling myself at some point in time a Scrum caretaker. I added independent to that afterwards. And that's sort of a reflection what the thing you see here. I've got, it's a little box I have, a little wooden box. It's here in my home office. It's next to my door, meaning I look at it regularly. Long time ago, I bought it because it resonated with me, saying life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. In the meantime, I found out that it's a quote from George Shaw, the famous novelist, it seems, and it resonated with me because in several ways. First of all, personally, for my personal life, or my personal view on life, but in a way also about Scrum. And this whole agile thing that we're trying to get across to people, agile way of acting, thinking, acting with agility. Acting with agility doesn't mean sitting around waiting for things to happen. Sort of much like life. It's not about sitting around waiting for things to happening and then blaming others for not happening, or blaming other people, looking angry at other people. It's about doing stuff, finding out, taking action. And that for me applies also to Scrum. So you could also say that Scrum is not about finding it somewhere. Scrum is about making it happen. And that's why I like it so much. And it resonated also, and it connects also to what Saad said, that I started calling myself a Scrum caretaker. It's not like long time ago. It's not like when I was born, and maybe sort of a year after that, my first words were, "I am a Scrum caretaker." It's something sort of that I found for myself. Back in 2016, after a period of working 3 years with, like Sat said, with Ken Schwaber at Scrum.org, and with people like Martin Hinchelwood on the call as a fellow trainer. So in 2016, leaving and going for total, let's say, independence, feet on the ground again, independence, working with teams out there in a self-employed way. I had to think of a title for myself because, you know, we all have this thing like LinkedIn as well. So I had to enter a title at LinkedIn, a role, a description, a title, whatever. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm a one-person company. I started that company back in 2013 when I left Capgemini, large consulting company, to work with, then to work exclusively with Ken. So giving up on that exclusivity, being out there, I had to find a title. I'm a one-person company. I could call myself the CEO, but sort of silly for a one-person company because I'm also the CFO, I'm also the marketing officer, I'm also the help desk officer, and I do all of the support, I maintain all of the computers and so on. So I thought, let me choose something that I feel intuitively reflects or mirrors who I am. And I felt like caretaker, Scrum caretaker. So my life has been revolving around Scrum for quite a while now. Actually, since 2003, like Saad said, which is scary because that's over 17 years of Scrum. Although honestly, my life of Scrum did not start with Scrum, which is strange enough a really good thing. Because my life with Scrum started with something that is called extreme programming, which is really cool. But it showed me, as from the start, how important good development practices, development standards, engineering standards, and so on are. That's really important because since a lot of people are forgetting that. So my life is Scrum, not starting with Scrum, and it was 2003, and it was in 2016 I decided to call myself a Scrum caretaker. Why? Because caretaker for me also reflects, hopefully, some sort of interest in working with people. It's not just about Scrum. It's not just about the process of Scrum. It's not just, which is even more important than the process, it's not just about the products that we build and that we maintain and evolve with Scrum. It's also about the people doing the work. So caretaker also reflects this idea of caring for people. And then added independent to that. And again, life is about creating yourself. And then it was only last year that I found out that I could put words to what I feel that I'm doing, and what drives me the most, and that is actually humanizing the workplace. And I found out because over the past 2 years, I've been talking a lot about engagement of people. So not just commitment, but engagement of people. I've been doing some research, some reading on it and so on. I recognize that we have a lot of things in Scrum to help people engage or sort of re-engage. And I wanted to focus that aspect of Scrum a lot more. So combining the idea of using Scrum to build better products, but also use Scrum to help people develop themselves in a way as professionals, hoping that those two will reinforce each other. The ability to build great products, the ability to develop yourself, and loving those two aspects and bringing them together is, for me, quite important. So life is about creating yourself, much like Scrum, actually. Now, I've been around for a while. I've seen small, large, medium, whatever sorts of organizations. And let's say sort of over the past 10 years, a lot of companies went to things that they call an agile transformation. And I've been watching a lot of them, been involved in a couple of them, and came to realize that whatever sort of transformation companies want to go through, they want to transform themselves. If you want to do it in an agile way or towards a more agile way of working, whatever people call that, I felt like there's a couple of, I feel, premises that we should take into account when going through what sort of organizational transformation to. And again, my love to work with people starts with the fact that, you know what, we go into companies and we've got all those beautiful agile coaches going into company and thinking that they're supposed to be telling people that they should be agile. And like, yeah, but why would you do that? Because for me, people are naturally agile. Because agile means adaptive, adapting to new insights, building on new insights, gaining new insights and using and applying them. We do that in our personal lives all the time. We don't need anybody to tell us that we should be agile, that we should adapt our holiday plans, or that we now should stay at home because there's some sort of thing happening out there. We have the natural ability to adapt. We don't need that. It's in our genes. We are human beings. We are social creatures. We have the natural ability to adapt. It only seems that in our professional environment, that natural ability to adapt, to be agile in a way, is being blocked or impeded or limited all the time. It means we are prevented from showing that natural ability. And that's for me very important. Whatever transformation you want to go through, start with the fact that people, individuals, human beings, we are naturally agile. We don't need people to tell us that we should be agile. We need people that might want to take away all of the elements that impede us from showing that ability. And then any organization, a healthy organization, for me, should be applying processes, whatever you want to call a process, that are building, that are founded, rooted, that are building on that natural ability of people to be agile, to adapt. So in that sense, whatever process you wanna use, it should build on that natural ability of people to adapt. And then on top of that, whatever structures you have around or connecting your processes and so on, it should build on that process that in itself builds on that natural ability. And that's for me very important. And that's, again, it starts with people. All things Agile, also Scrum, starts and ends with people. And that's for me very important. Now, one of the better things of the whole COVID crisis that's coming over us is that last year I had a lot of sort of free time suddenly. engagement being cancelled and classes being cancelled and so on. So I used that about a year ago, and in April started writing a paper, which is called Moving Your Scrum Downfield, trying to describe the 6 characteristics, sort of essential traits that make Scrum work beyond just the artifacts and so on. And in writing that paper, I used a definition I made up for myself of Scrum, calling Scrum a simple framework that enables people to derive value from complex challenges. Now, that's in itself already sort of on the edge of being a little bit overly complicated, but for me, it's important because it has 4 essential aspects. And the 2 first aspects in my definition is, first of all, Scrum is a simple framework. It has a limited set of rules, which is quite essential if you want to tackle complex problems and complex challenges. You can't tackle complexity with complexity. It's sort of sad, like what we just talked about. This meetup used to be called Scaled Agile. Well, it's a bit of a problem with a lot of Scaled Agile solutions, whatever frameworks, that in the end, you'd end up tackling complexity with complexity. Guess what? The result is pure chaos. It doesn't work. That's why you need simple rules. Now, that's something for a different aspect, but sort of simple or simplicity to tackle complexity. But the 2 other aspects for me that are really important, it's sort of, first of all, it's about the goal. It's about value. The goal is to derive value, to increase value, your ability to create value. So the goal is value. And who's doing that? It's people doing the work. We've got people in Scrum teams. We work with people. A lot of certainly the software that we create is used by people. Our stakeholders are people. Managers are people. Human beings. So value and people. And for me in Scrum, that's what I want to talk about today. They're more closely connected than a lot of people think. So let's start with value first. Now, value, and that's very important, and that seems to be a very difficult thing still to grasp. Value for me is a very different driver than volume is. Volume is doing more. It's quantity. It's more features. It's quicker on the market. More. So volume is more. It's sort of that velocity sort of type of thinking. Yeah? Creating more output, where value for me is more like the outcome of your output. You have to produce output, yes, but it's the impact you have with your output. That is for me value. So think outcome versus output. You need output, but the real purpose of Scrum is to look at the outcome you create with your output, or the outcomes of your output. So I remember a long time ago, when working at Scrum.org, and probably Martin Hinshelwood, who's on the call, will remember this. I think it was about 2013 and 2014. Ken Sherwin and I, we worked on something that we called Agility Path. We wanted to help people, management people, also executive people, leaders, Scrum Masters, Scrum teams, whatever. We want to help them go through this thing that people often call a transformation. And we wanted to do it the Scrum way, meaning doing it with sprints and so on. But one of the purposes also was to get people's focus away from performance of the teams. How are you performing? How much are you doing? What's your velocity? What's your estimates? Tasks and again, volume. And we wanted to draw their attention towards value. So not at the performance of the people, but the outcome, the impact of their work. So not how much work do you do, but what are we achieving with your work? And to make that more tangible, we added something to that, and it was in a framework called Agility Path. Nobody knows the name anymore, but that's not important. Nowadays, I call it more like a sort of exploratory management style, rather than predictive management or exploratory management or empirical management. And we wanted to make it more tangible. And sort of my creativity stops when having to think about stuff. And a lot of companies have this thing called KPIs, key performance indicators. I assume a lot of people know them. Nowadays, I know that a lot of companies are talking about OKRs, so it's sort of the Google alternative to KPIs. But in the end, a lot of companies still use it as KPIs, meaning not as indicators, so the I, but more like targets, hard-coded targets, leading to wrong behaviors of people starting to lie and so on. So it loses the effect of being an indicator. So I wanted to replace the KPI things with something that I called KVI, so key value indicator, indicators of your ability to produce value. Well, sort of the idea. And what were those key value indicators? So we had identified sort of three areas for them, which I think nowadays is still called KVAs, key value areas, probably. And sort of at the highest level, value being reflected in things like financial returns, benefits, profits, financial profits, financial benefits, return for the company, maybe in a negative, more like negative expression, cost reduction or cost cutting fix, often something with money. Yeah, and then often also very important, we are doing this for certain types of people, meaning consumers, users, end users, buyers or so, but at least consumers or customers. Your ability to deliver value being reflected in an indication of customer satisfaction. For instance, it might be an NPS types of other types of service, but at least value for the organization. And for most commercial organizations, that would be something with money. Value for the people that we do this for, consumers, customers, and buyers, but also value for the people that actually do the work, which is often something that a lot of companies forget. When I ask them about what would you call value, how would you identify or define value? Most often people come up with value for the organization in terms of money or other benefits, something with users, but what about the people doing the work? What if the value of adopting Scrum to become Agile should also be in engagement that the teams feel, re-engaging them. And then next to that was sort of what we called value, sort of primary ability to deliver value reflected in some potential measurements. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the goal was to do this sort of measuring in loops so that you have feedback cycles. And at some point in time that you can create some sort of trend lines and so on, just making sure that keep it to being an indicator, not a target. It's not an objective. It's something that should give you an indication of your actual situation. And next to that, we had things like your ability to maintain value. Imagine you would have a high value. And I always take a strange example of a long time ago, Microsoft, certainly in the 90s. I should be careful because we got Martin Hinshelwood on the call, but something Microsoft long time ago, they had high returns, were making a lot of money, but probably customer satisfaction and maybe team engagement weren't too brilliant. And that is still not a sustainable way of working. But imagine that you would have a high return, high customer satisfaction, maybe even high team engagement. What's the purpose of that if you can release, let's say, only once a year? Because in the meantime, between two releases, you're sort of blindfolded again. You don't know where you're heading for. So ideas to maintain your value. And then also the idea of, I think, implementing or adopting Scrum, and that's also an expression of become more agile, is also to free up time for people so that can start about innovative ideas again. Again, it's different things than volume. If you're in a volume way of thinking, probably you're pre-planning your days, utilization types of thinking, capacity types of thinking. You take away all sort of energy and mental room to think about better ideas to do stuff, under pressure to do just more, quicker. It's not sort of helpful. So value in itself, your ability to sustain that value, and also your ability to discover new value in terms of innovation. Yeah. So that was agility path. I'll come back on that. But it was the idea of working with key value indicators and at the highest level, thinking about something with money, value for the organization, value for your users, your consumers, and value for the people doing the work, which is the last one is often, sadly enough, forgotten. Now I've added sample to that because you want to think about this for yourself. your context, your organization, your product, your user base, your market, your competitors, and so on. You want to think about those things for yourself. I'm much into the principle sort of idea of creating feedback loops and then helping people figure out what are we going to measure, what would be good indicators for ourselves, maybe something with value, and then figure out for yourself in your context what would be important. Now, that was sort of about value thinking. I'll come back on that. And then the second topic of tonight is sort of the people aspect. So value and people. I will come back on how those are connected. Now, what I see these days, what I feel is happening, it's been happening for a while. So been working with Scrum for 17 years now. Scrum itself has been around for 25 years. That's quite a while. And I believe if there's something that we've achieved in those, let's say 25 years, so not just me, but certainly in the 17 years, is that we got people away from pure predictive thinking, predicting, let's say, roadmaps in all possible details for 3 years ahead of time, and get the idea of iterative incremental thinking, a little bit emergence and so on, or what we call in Scrum the empirical process, so empiricism. Making progress based on inspection and adaptation rather than pure prediction. Now, I feel a lot of organizations that I go to visit, they're getting the idea of that sort of process aspect of Scrum, the empirical process or empiricism. They're getting that idea a lot, but the people aspect is still so much underrated. So Scrum is so much more than just a new process. There's a lot of aspects with people in that. So, and that, why do I think that's important? For me, Scrum's DNA, so it also described in that paper, is built upon a sort of, DNA has two strings. One string is indeed empiricism, so meaning empirical process control, the empirical process, but the other aspect is self-organization. It goes back to the roots of Scrum already in a long time paper that I don't know whether you know it, it's called the new product development game, 1986, talks about self-organization. It's in the Agile manifesto. The best things emerge from self-organizing teams and so on. So empirical process control, but combined with self-organization. What I see with a lot of organizations, they're getting the process thing because that's sort of, let's say, more cold. That's a process. Oh yeah, that's following a process, that's following steps, that's doing stuff according to some sort of, let's say, minimal, but still some sort of cookbook. But what about within that process, going for self-organization? That seems to be very difficult. So I do hope that at some point in time, who knows, might take another 17 years of my life, but I hope that sometime we can meet again and see, you know what, that first sort of couple of decades of Scrum, a lot around the process, but see what we have achieved now in focusing more on the people aspect of Scrum. Now we have good reasons to focus on the people aspect of Scrum and engagement, because, and that's how I ended up talking about this so much a couple of years ago. I was asked to write an article for a magazine in the Netherlands around performance in an agile environment. So I call it performance in the world of Scrum. And I looked up some research, and this was one of the things I found from the Gallup Institute, so a US-based institute, doing every so many years some surveys around the world, quite a large scale, checking in with people, the workforce, employees, about their level of engagement. Now, and that seems to be sort of very scary, because I live in Belgium, that is Western Europe. For the time being, the UK is also still Western Europe, by the way. You might have left the EU, but still Western Europe. I've seen some people, I've seen June Long, you're from Canada. But it seems that at least in Western Europe, and you can look up your own region, it seems that only 10% of the workforce indicate that they're really engaged for the company, believing in the company, coming to work in good spirit, inspired, enthusiastic, motivated, engaged. Only 10%. That is awfully low. It means from a company of, let's say, 1,000 people, that's only 100 out of those 1,000 people really coming to work enthusiastically motivated and engaged. And it seems that in Western Europe, 71% of people say, well, sort of what I call the sort of couldn't care less attitude. Well, you know what, as long as I got my salary or my paycheck by the end of the month, I'm fine. Probably sitting a lot of time on the desk, sort of 9 to 5, not nowadays sitting at home, 9 to 5, but sort of looking their watch and wanting to go home as quickly as possible and do something that they really like. And even more scary is that 19% in Western Europe, 18% across the world on average, 90% in Western Europe of people say that they are actively disengaged, meaning what I call negatively engaged, actively working against the company, working against colleagues, fighting conflicts, negativity, all day, sort of all day long. That is scary. It means on average across the world, 85% of employees say that they're not engaged or actively disengaged. That is huge. So there are good reasons to focus on people and the engagement of people, because the engagement levels of engagement are very, very low. It has awful effects like people wanting to leave the company all the time. People also, that's what these statistics are about. People even wanting to leave the region, want to go live and work somewhere else. You know, I'm going to assume that for a lot of countries you will recognize this. Burnout is a real problem. Long-term illness is a real problem. Certainly, where I live in Belgium and a lot of companies that I see in the Netherlands. And looking up some figures, this is a global problem. So it has a lot of negative effects. So when I think back of what we tried to do with agility path and try to get people to think in terms of value, and just at the highest level, financial value, or let's say value for the organization, value for consumers in maybe expressed in or mirrored in things like customer satisfaction, and value for the people doing the work, it seems that we have a lot of room for improvement in team engagement. So if you're going to work with value, and you want to think about indicators of your ability to create value, you know what? Forget financial returns for the time being. Keep measuring them, but don't focus on them. In a way, forget customer satisfaction. Keep measuring it, but don't focus on it. No, go all in and try to increase team engagement, because it has 85% potential improvement. There is not a single other indicator that you can sort of increase with 85%. So go completely for team engagement, and it's my belief that as an organization, the gift you will get in return is you will get more money from your work, higher profits, higher benefits. Customer satisfaction will increase. Imagine that you could increase team engagement within your company from 10% to 20 to 30 to 40%. People doing a good job because they want to do it, because they believe in it, because they believe in quality, whatever, which is all connected. So and that is for me so important. So value and that team engagement, so important and so intertwined and connected. And Scrum has a lot of ways to work with to increase engagement of people. I'll come back on that. Now, this is a smaller survey, the results of a small survey. It's by the Boston Consulting Group. It's smaller in terms of countries. It's only 5 Western countries and then China. It's a lot smaller, but still I like it because I just recognize this from practice. So what has the Boston Consulting Group been doing? They've been asking people in a management position about their future, their dreams, their hopes, their whatever, their satisfaction, their, in a way, their engagement. And they have found that only 37% of people currently in a management position, so a real, let's say, hierarchical management position, only 37% of them say that they still wish to remain a manager at some point in time. And people that are being managed in that way, only 9% of them still aspire to become some sort of manager. So engagement with the workforce might be low, but engagement with a lot of managers is also really low. And the biggest dissatisfaction is the fact that they all have to implement decisions that are imposed on them. It feels like they can't really make their own decisions. They just have to implement decisions. I don't know whether you recognize this, but it seems that we've been very good in creating companies with a lot of layers, sort of pyramid structure with a lot of layers. And the only thing we do is from one layer to the one under that layer, we just impose decisions. And we do that all the way down. And who's the biggest victim? You know, the 10% engagement of teams. Because they're at the bottom. They can't impose pressure on and decisions on other people. And which is also scary is that a lot of managers say, you know what, I have to do this because it's the only way to get a higher salary. It's the only way to grow in terms of status, maybe, I don't know, a bigger company car and so on. And then people, if you're familiar with that, this brings us to the topic, and I'll come back on that, to extrinsic motivation. They are not intrinsically motivated to be a manager. They're just doing it because of status, maybe ego, company car, salary, and so on, which is not healthy. Again, people. So it's not good for the teams. It's not good for managers too. Now, there was a good thing about this survey. They didn't check in just with people currently in a management position about how they currently feel about their job. They also checked in with those people to think, yeah, so if you don't want to wish to remain a manager because you don't think it's good, it's not the way it's happening, you have to implement decisions, you're only doing it because of extrinsic motivators, what should change then? What should management ideally be about? And those people brought up a sort of top 5 of aspects of what management ideally should be about. Meaning it should be about helping team members develop themselves, develop their skills, give them feedback so that they can develop their skills, eliminate obstacles, facilitate teams through problems and over blockages and over hindrances and so on. Setting goals, giving people goals rather than tasks and instructions, making decisions rather than having to implement decisions, and help people and teams develop, give them meaning, goals, and try to motivate them. And this felt like, wow, this is really cool, because this is actually Scrum. I don't know whether you recognize those 5 things. You can map them to the accountabilities we have in Scrum. So let me quickly go into that, because in Scrum we've got these accountabilities: product owner, Scrum team, Scrum master, and they're quite clear accountabilities. And we've always said in a world of Scrum, the sentence, I don't know if you still remember this, moving authority down the line. Well, those people actually in a management position, in a way, without knowing it probably, they're saying that you should do more Scrum. Because in Scrum, you've got a product owner who's going to help people, is not going to instruct people, who's going to help set goals, who's going to set direction, have a vision for a product, optimizing the value delivered. It's somebody who's going to help in that regard. We've got a Scrum team creating done increments, self-organizing themselves, self-managing themselves. Nobody telling them how to do that. It complements the accountability of a product owner. And we've got a Scrum master. Well, it's eliminating obstacles. That sounds a lot like removing impediments, helping people develop, giving people feedback, making sure that people know how important feedback is, iterative incremental thinking, through the Scrum process. So in a way, that sort of 5 ideal things that management should be about, they are in the Scrum roles, the Scrum accountabilities that we have. And if they can really build on that as on themselves as a sort of self-organizing unit, self-organizing ecosystem, in a company that is now built up of hierarchical layers and structures, they will grow new relationships with stakeholders within the company. Again, stakeholders no longer about imposing decisions. No, it's helping them, giving them sort of additional feedback with regards to strategies, strategic directions of the company, and so on, rather than imposing decisions on them. And then also grow different relationships with consumers. So in a way, people currently in a management position say, well, you should be enacting the accountabilities of Scrum, because that sounds a lot like those top 5 abilities. It's about helping people develop their skills, giving them feedback, create meaning, setting goals rather than giving instructions. So in a way, we have that in Scrum. And a long time ago, back in 2014, I wrote this thing when I talked about the role of the Scrum Master in a blog note of mine, calling Scrum Master in a way a manager, because Scrum Master, facilitator, coach, teacher, challenger, whatever you want to call it, change agent, give all those funny names, in a way that is a way of managing. But not just the Scrum Master is a manager, a product owner is a manager of the product. The teams manage themselves. And you have those 3 domains of management, they complement each other. So management suddenly becomes not something that is just purely hierarchical, but it is shared across a group of people, across an ecosystem. So, and that's for me very important. And that's why I call this thing, Scrum starts with product. Yeah. So you organize around a product, you have a product owner for that, you have one or more Scrum teams building increments for the product, you have Scrum Master or Scrum Masters to facilitate that, growing new relationships with stakeholders and consumers. So you want to use Scrum to grow a sort of ecosystem around your product. It's what I call a product hub. It's not a hierarchical system. It's not a linear system. There's nothing like with linear hierarchy or whatever you want to call it. It has a number of roles. It's got people working together. There are agreement standards. I explicitly added amicability to that. Let's keep it human also. And that's important. So grow Scrum, use Scrum to grow an ecosystem around the product, which is then based on that idea of moving authority down the line, which is actually what it sort of builds in agility, flexibility into your organizational structures. So people are naturally agile. Scrum for me is a process that builds on that natural ability of people to adapt, because Scrum does no more than setting some sort of minimal structure, a minimal set of reminders for people to regularly perform an inspection so that they can identify and perform adaptations. So people naturally agile. Scrum as a process builds on that ability. The big challenge is that to rethink our structures so that they build on that process of Scrum, which in itself builds on that natural ability of people to adapt. And we have some work to do. But this again is in line with that old paper, 1986, the new product development game, which in a way already talked about the role, if you want, of management in new product development, which is what Scrum is all about. And they already said that management should act as an investor, or they call it a venture capitalist, meaning not intervening on a daily basis, but providing guidance, money, moral support, giving feedback, helping people do a better job rather than telling them what to do. They already talked about that. 1986, and we are still figuring out this sort of role of management in a context or a world of Scrum. Yeah. And I see there's still a little typo in there, but I don't know who notices that, but I do. It bothers me enormously. But still, so it already goes back to the new product development game. What if you would have a product hub, a product with a product owner, one or more Scrum Masters, one or more Scrum teams to build integrated, releasable versions of your product, and then rethink your relationship with the people around that. So the 1986, and we're still struggling with that. And a lot has to do with the fact that we're still looking, for me, a lot of organizations still look at people as resources. And people are not resources. And Sat, you've shown my little green book already. This is a quote from that book. It was already in the first edition, 2013. People are not resources. We are people, human beings. We are not robots. We are not cogs. We are not replaceable pieces of machinery. People are just what we are, people, human beings. We've got feelings, we've got emotions, we've got sentiments. We can be in a good mood and a not so good mood. We can love to work at home and some others really don't like it, or the other way around. We are beautifully complex and unpredictable creatures. So we are not robots. It seems sometimes that a lot of organizations think of a team like, oh yeah, that's like a sort of machine, right? If within the machine, one piece drops out, has a depression, a burnout, whatever, no problem. We'll just replace it with a compatible piece of machinery. That's not how it works. You can have two people, same CV, same experience, similar education, whatever, and they can be very different people, individuals to work with. So you can't just take one person out of a team, replace them with somebody else, and expect as if that everything goes on as if nothing happened. That's not how it works to work with people. So and that's for me very important, and that's something really, really important. And I feel, remember the low levels of engagement. So when I started talking about these topics, I started with pure engagement a couple of years ago, and I moved towards humanizing the workplace. And I had to think back of some sort of old experiences of myself. And I remember the last time I had to go through what is called a yearly performance review. That, you know, those awful things that there's still companies using that, and more than is healthy. That was by the end of 2010, and I still remember what an awful experience it was. I felt abused, I felt manipulated, I felt that people were using stuff against me. I felt like my yearly performance review was, despite the fact that I had spent so much time on preparing it, it was still, the outcome was one big surprise for me. And it wasn't the surprise that I was hoping for. In that sense, it wasn't a good surprise, it was a bad surprise. They officially said it wasn't connected or coupled to salary discussions until after a month I found out that my salary increase was denied because I had not so good review before that. My review was only sort of average. I'm like, oh my God, this really was not helpful. So when talking about humanization and before that engagement and low levels of engagement of people, I had to think back of that because that performance review, that was not really a great motivational thing for me. Or the other way around, it actually demotivated me. So maybe you want to think back of how that's working for you. But I remember 10 years ago, by the end of 2010, having to think about this. Why is this so awful? Why does it feel so bad for me? And it's sort of a recurring theme in my career. I, I I I felt like I felt intoxicated. That was an environment that left me with a feeling of being intoxicated. It wasn't motivating me. It was intoxicating me. And maybe I'm overly sensitive to those things. I don't know, but I felt like this is intoxicated. So and then I also started looking back at all of the other experiences I had in my work life. Just little secret, I'm a really old guy, so I turned 50 last year. That explains the gray beard and so on. So I started working. So I graduated back in 1992. So by the end of 2010, after that terrible performance review, I looked back at all the things, and I was thinking for myself, sort of scales or levels of valuation. How often have I felt like really valued within a company? And oh my God, I had to realize that in general, I most of the experiences was feeling intoxicated. Sometimes I felt tolerated, like, okay, you can be around, but be quiet and so on, which is sort of impossible for me. Sometimes I even felt appreciated, but I've never really felt motivated by my environment, by my managers, by my companies, by my organizations to really go for it. So think about it. Think for yourself. Do you feel intoxicated, maybe tolerated, or do you feel like, yeah, this is motivating me? People are motivating me. And then I had to think about what would make me feel valued, or and try to extrapolate it to other people. And I come with this idea, this sort of triangle. Well, how could I increase my feeling of valuation if I can do something that I really like to do, that I have an interest in? Yeah, this is something I really like, having an interest in. This is something that I have a talent for, or that my organization helps me grow my talent, or even develop my talent. And in a domain that I like to work in organization, a domain, I don't know, economic domain, might be, I don't know, artificial intelligence of the e-com world or an internet or whatever, the financial world, even lawyers, whatever. So something that I feel is something I want to do, something I feel, yeah, I'm good at it, or I might be given the means to become better or become really good at it. And it's in a broader environment domain that I really like to work in. That would increase my feeling of valuation. And that sort of feeling of valuation, how to connect that to that finding out, discovering it is something that you want to do, it's something you feel that you have the talent for, or how can we help you develop that talent or grow that talent? Is it something that overall that you really an environment that you want to work in, and how to connect that? I don't know, but I do know that a yearly performance review, not helpful. Really not, because it's not about helping. And think back of people currently in a management position, helping people find out, helping people develop, giving them feedback, giving them goals, which is very different than at least what most yearly performance reviews are about. So think about it. Those are two topics that I thought about a long time ago, 10 years ago, after my last awful experience of a performance review. Yeah, it didn't leave me with a feeling of valuation, and I couldn't connect it to that sort of triangle of valuation for myself. So think about it. At least that whole helping people should be an iterative incremental process, a cyclic process, not just once a year, also not just twice a year, bashing on people and then thinking that it will motivate them, because that's sort of the old carrots and stick strategy, try to entice them with a beautiful carrot. If you work really hard, you will get a beautiful performance review, and also even a salary increase. But in the end, you just bash them with the stick. That it doesn't work like that. And that brings us to the topic of Daniel Pink. I hope you've heard of it. Daniel Pink, guy, wrote a beautiful book. It's over 10 years old. It's called Drive. It's about what motivates people. And Daniel Pink in his book describes social and other research, all has to do with people. And he has found out that in our line of work, let's say cognitive work, creative work, complex work, let's say highly unpredictable work, that unpredictability, that organizations are discovering that, yeah, the empirical process works better. Cool. But you know what even works a lot better? That you would try to have engaged, let's say, intrinsically motivated people, because Daniel Pink has found out that in our sorts of work, money actually is important. It is. Um, that's some sort of misconception I feel that in our Agile world has gone around Daniel Pink, saying that Daniel Pink says that money is not important. No. Daniel Pink said that money really is important, but up to a certain point. Once you've got the matter of money off the table, meaning you can go to work not having to worry about paying off your house or your mortgage or feeding your family. When the topic of money is off your head, um, then you can focus on the work again. So money is important, but beyond that sort of level, and that's not black and white, obviously, that doesn't work like that in a complex and human environment. But there's a sort of tipping point where money is not the biggest concern anymore, where the work is the concern again. And that's where Daniel Pink says, beyond that topic of money, what really counts for people is what Daniel Pink calls autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, one thing, Donald has shown you the other book that we published last year, 97 Things Every Scrum Practitioner Should Know. For that book, I've invited people from around the world, known and a lot less known people also, to contribute an article, 97 in total. And a few of them are from a Belgian friend of mine who's not just into Scrum, but also into neuroscience, which I find very fascinating. It's too difficult for me to grasp, but I had really great conversations with my fellow here in Belgium. And we also talked about Daniel Pink. And I said, you know what, Gunther, Daniel Pink is absolutely right, but it's a little oversimplified. It's a little bit more complex than what Daniel Pink says. First of all, we said let's talk about competence rather than just mastery. Get sort of mastery sounds like more better. I don't know. Let's just call that competence from the neuroscience, and also purpose. Maybe a better term that we talked about is about relatedness. So having the feeling that you can relate to things that are happening that your organization is doing. And next to those three topics of Daniel Pink, let's also talk about what is very important for us people. And that's ingrained in our brains, in our genes, in our whatever, our DNA, whatever. It's human. We like certainty. We don't like uncertainty. So we like some sort of predictability. We have all these little mechanisms of anticipation for that. And fairness, and that's already a little bit in the money aspect of Pink, is also very important. So working with people, understanding what causes valuation or not, and try to increase valuation and trying to increase engagement of people, that means you have to be aware of what is it that really motivates people. Are they still concerned with money? Yes, no. And if no, what really autonomy, competence, relatedness, certainty, and some sort of sense of fairness, being fairly paid compared to your colleagues, compared to the market, and so on. And certainty is also this great thing. In a lot of large organizations I've seen, Scrum was just used as an excuse to sort of restructure or reorganize. I don't know whether you recognize that. Scrum was just, we're going to go agile, we're going to need less people to do more. Meaning they were just giving themselves an excuse to fire people, to lay off lots of people. And in a couple of those things in large organizations I've seen as an external consultant, I was sort of surprised because a lot of managers that lay off a lot of people, they still honestly believe that the people that are not being fired, that they now just go on and continue and that their motivation increases. And I'm trying to tell them, no, you have instilled some sense of fear in those people. Yeah, they now know that I was not part of this layoff round, but maybe I'm going to be part of the next layoff round. You've taken away all sense of certainty and even some sort of fairness. Of course, people are not motivated. They're just scared that they will be in the next layoff round. So it doesn't work like that. That's not how motivation works. So I think that's really, really important. And obviously autonomy, that what Daniel Pink calls, has a lot to do with that self-organizing aspect of Scrum, or self-organization. Yeah? Autonomy, the ability to choose even maybe your own team, in my world, your own product hub, be part of a certain product hub, try to develop yourself and so on. So self-organization, again, next to empiricism, then the other aspect of Scrum's DNA, which needs, I believe, a lot more attention to increase engagement, to increase a sense of valuation of people. Yes, Sat, you had a question.
Yeah, and I just thought I would give you a moment to catch your breath. You've been delivering amazing insights and content for the best part of an hour now. We did get a little bit of interesting debate in the chat between some of our attendees just around cool. Self-organization and self-management, and with the recent change in the Scrum guide. And I think a few people were quite keen to hear your thoughts around the introduction of the idea of self-management versus the idea of self-organization. And given you nicely brought up that slide, I thought it would be a nice segue back to that conversation.
Yeah, cool. It's also a great segue to my next slide.
Well, there we go.
Sometimes magic happens. So thanks, Sat.
It's as if we planned it that way.
Yeah, that's good.
So I've got the original thing here, just so you get a view. So Martin's chipped in as well. So I think we're interested in. I just want to get I'm doing a bit of scroll. Oh, here we are. So just wondering why the Scrum guide changed self-organization to self-management, if self-organization is part of the DNA of Scrum.
Yeah. Well, good question. First of all, that's how I represent Scrum's DNA. It goes back to the new product development game. It goes back also to the Agile Manifesto, so I believe self-organization is very important. I don't know why they changed it. I have no idea. I can have a sort of clue, but I'll keep talking about self-organization. And the way I interpret at least that changes is in the following way, and it's represented over here. And by the way, this picture I've been using this for several years, so it's not like I made it up for to explain the new Scrum Guide. What I use this picture for is self-organization starts for me, what I've been calling for quite a while now, several years, starts at the level of what I call self-management or self-managing. Meaning in a negative way, a manager-led organization or a manager-led team or a team that is being controlled by a senior developer telling everybody what they should be doing, or the PMO telling everybody what they should be doing, following some sort of prefixed plan or whatever. That is manager-led in general. That is not self-organization. It doesn't work. It's not helpful in a creative, complex environment where we have to put all our brains together, figure out stuff together, deal with a lot of uncertainties or unpredictable events, like maybe people falling away, people becoming sick, a COVID crisis sweeping the planet, things not working out the way that we planned them, and so on. That's why we don't follow the plan. That's why we apply empirical process control. Now, empiricism works a lot better if you don't tell people what they should be doing sort of on a daily basis. So for me, self-management is for me the minimum level of self-organization. So it's a way to express self-organization. And by the way, the funny thing about with the term self-organization, so we've been using it since the days of the new product development game. Look it up in the English dictionary. It doesn't exist. So the word self-organization doesn't exist. That is not a noun. It does exist as a verb, meaning to self-organize. But self-organization itself as an English word doesn't exist, which is for me cool because it means we can give it meaning ourselves, which is good. So self-organization for me starts at a minimal level with self-managing teams, meaning a team figuring out who's going to do what within a sprint, at what point in time. They figure it out for themselves. Nobody external to the team tells them who should be doing what at what point of time within a sprint. And again, that goes back to the new product development game. Management and other people outside of the team, forces outside of the team, they do not interfere in how the team works. They work from the outset of the team. In Scrum terms, that means they might be visiting the sprint review, so the boundaries of a sprint, but not within the sprint themselves. It's what I call self-managing teams, meaning a team that figures out what to do within the sprint and who's going to do that. Nobody tells that for them. Now, what I've been observing with certainly the last large organization that I worked with, it was in the Netherlands. So it's a large insurance company. And I've been working on and off. So I work I like to do coaching on an on-demand basis. So sort of let people ask to be coached. So, and I was working on and off with 15 teams. So regularly at their request, visiting a sprint review or a sprint planning or sometimes sprint retrospective and so on. And what I've noticed over a period of time from those 15 teams, some of them were really starting to fly. They were really, really taking off, really motivated, finding each other, getting to know each other better, gelling more as a team, finding their motivation, working well together. Now, from those 15 teams, I saw about over a period of time, 3 or 4 teams really becoming really what I call highly collaborative. I don't like the term high performance teams, by the way. I like highly collaborative teams. So really starting to collaborate and performance surfacing as a result from their high levels of collaboration. Now, every single of those teams went back down again. They plummeted again. And why? All because of the same reason. People from outside of the team, external to the team, managers, department heads, PMOs, whatever, executives, pulling people away from the team. Oh yeah, you now go to have to work for the next month. You will have to work in that team because they need you more. So people external to the team, thinking that they know better who should be part of the team and who shouldn't, and in what team they should be. So continuously intervening in, let's say, team composition. And again, that was for me sort of the proof again of my point of view that I try to reflect here, that for me, self-designing teams is actually really important. If people working as a team can organize, manage their work within sprints against the shared goals of creating releasable increments of their products no later than by the end of the sprint, if they can do that, that means they also have the skills, the intelligence, the creativity to know what skills do we need in the team, what skills do we no longer need in the team, and how to deal with that. And again, our role is to help them do that. So beyond self-managing themselves, I believe that teams can also be self-designing, meaning maybe at the start of an initiative, design themselves within the boundaries of Scrum, because designing, composing a team, that's a complex challenge. How do we deal with complexity? Again, self-organization and an empirical process, iterative incremental, so a couple of iterations. So self-design, if people know how to organize their work within sprints of 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, maybe often 2 weeks nowadays, that means those people also have the intelligence, the insights, the knowledge, the understanding of what skills do we need, what skills do we need more, what skills do we need less. And that's what I call self-designing teams. And I like to believe that with the Scrum Guide update, they wanted to make very clear that Scrum starts with self-managing teams. The difficulty for me, I think, with the update is that for me, self-organization doesn't necessarily stop with self-managing only, which might be the danger. Now, off the record a little bit, one of the things that we have found difficulties in explaining self-organization, and I believe they wanted to make it more clear by changing it to self-managing. But honestly, I just felt that we have replaced one term that we cannot really explain really well, and we replace it with another term that we still cannot really explain very well. So I don't know whether that's really progress, but still. But I think it was, I hope it was intended to make clear that Scrum starts with self-managing teams. But you don't have to stop there. And I've seen team plummets again because they weren't self-designing. They couldn't decide that, no, you want to pull that person away from our team. No, we are going to need them. Yep. So does that help, Sat?
Yeah, I think so. There's a nice ongoing chat in the chat, so that's
Okay,
good.
cool.
It's nice when everybody kind of chips in and supports each other. How are you doing time wise? I'm just conscious we've got 15 minutes left.
Yep.
And we
Yeah, absolutely.
a
Yep.
time box, so let me know if you're okay, and we could take a few
Yep.
questions. We've got time.
Yeah, I'm still fine. I think let me work towards the end, and I will go into a couple of more questions. Yeah. But I hope this helps. So I've been using this picture for several years now. I personally I like the term self-organization. It's such a powerful term. We can give it meaning, and you can take it in very different directions and up to 7 different points. Yeah. Well, what I just wanted to close the session with is to share from that same research from the Gallup Institute that focusing on people and people's engagement really, really helps. Because they have found that in companies, a part of this survey, companies with high levels of engagement compared to companies with low levels of engagement, that the outcomes of those companies were a lot better. In terms of, and again, think in terms of those high level key value indicators, business outcomes, something with money, profitability, benefits, whatever for the company, consumer or customer outcomes, something with customer satisfaction. Those two aspects in companies with high levels of engagement were a lot better, meaning higher sales, higher productivity in terms of the ability to do more, higher profitability, and better customer metrics. But what is even more important, again, in terms of think back key value indicators, team engagement, employee outcomes in traditional terms, lower absenteeism, and a lot lower turnover, people not leaving the company, people not falling sick, people not suffering from burnouts or long-term absences, people not wanting to move to another team, another department, another organization, or even another country. Yeah. And in physical work, less safety incidents, so less injuries, less problems. So higher levels of engagement really work. Therefore, my message, focus on increasing team engagement and you will have better business and customer outcomes. Yeah. And that's in that sense, and that's sort of last part of the message, closing the loop, literally. Closing the loop is important in what I called agility path of that, or that exploratory management of value. So try to get people to think not in terms of team performance, but in terms of value. What is the impact of your work? Not how much work do you do, but what is the value that we can derive from your work in terms of business outcomes, consumer outcomes, and team outcomes? Have key value indicators for that, measure that regularly so that you have see trends and you have more measuring points in place so you can see trends and trend lines and patterns. And then that's not everything. What I said a while ago is in Scrum, inspection without adaptation is pointless. It's an act of futility, meaning just inspecting your value and your outcome that's not good enough. You have to do something with it. That's why it's a closed loop. It's a Scrum loop actually. So measuring is inspection. What is the adaptation? Is helping teams better. At the sprint review, the goal should be to start with the question, how much value has this team potentially created in this sprint? And what can we do to help the team create even more value in the next sprint or the next couple of sprints? Over volume-based discussions or volume-oriented discussions. And that's again, this is how can we facilitate change in the organization as leaders, leadership managers, whatever, Scrum Masters, and people for themselves. And for me, the answer is clear. Humanize your workplace. Create an environment that people can really self-organize, self-design, self-manage, whatever you want to call it, work in sprints. Think about valuation, think about what motivates them. Is this something you want to do? Is this something that you're good at? What can we do to help you become better at it? How can we help you acquire new skills? How can we transcend not just cross-functional teams, but transcend cross-functional composition of teams into cross-fertilization, learning new tricks, learning from other people. And that's going to require self-designing because you can't tear up a team all the time and expect those things to happen. So humanize the workplace, create an environment where people like to come to work, where people feel intrinsically motivated again. So that's for me in a nutshell the answer. And then just three more things. If you think about, we started with something like Agile transformation, the Agile premises to whatever types of organizational transformation. Think back, how are you going to measure whether your transformation is successful? Again, it's not in volume. It's maybe not even directly in value, but it's not a transformation if it doesn't change how you work. If it just adds work on top of what you already do. That idea in Scrum often for people, oh my God, this is Scrum. Now we even have to do more meetings. Wait. If you're implementing Scrum, if you're adopting Scrum, and you're not doing it in a way that you can eliminate existing meetings, it means you're doing something not completely as it was intended to be. So it should change how you work. It shouldn't be a separate change project. It shouldn't add work on top of what you do. It should change how you work on the workflow on a daily basis. That is transforming. And it should simplify how you work. And it should, if it's with Scrum, it should engage people. Again, Scrum should be implemented in a way that it builds on that natural ability of people to be adaptive, to be agile. Those are for me indicators. And that's why a lot of organizations make their transformation, whatever you want to call it. That's why the title, way too explicit, enforced, imposed, they push people around. That's not going to help. create an environment and stop managing for tasks, stop managing for individual performance. Try to foster an environment which has boundaries like Scrum, the rules of Scrum, working in sprints, working as teams, working on a product or delivering releasable or usable increments of whatever it is that you're doing. A sort of bounded environment, and stop pushing people around, stop breathing down the necks all day long, stop working on pushing for tasks and estimates and so on. Look for value and work from the boundaries, and thereby try to create an environment where people can engage again.
Wonderful. I like.
Is this a good way to?
Yeah, that was an excellent point to finish there. No, that was lovely. Brilliant. We've got about 9 minutes, so I think we probably have a huge amount of time for questions. Just give me enough time to wrap up. There was an interesting one which might be nice to hear your thoughts on, Gunther, which was around. You talked earlier about your own sort of horrendous experiences with the performance review process, the end of year review process, and somebody asked, I've got it here, I think. So do you have any sort of suggestions around alternatives to that? So what would you suggest an organization replaces that with?
Not just eliminate it.
All.
Yeah, don't do it. Work in a totally different way, meaning, again, work from the outset, work from the boundaries. In Scrum, you have a sprint retrospective by the end of every sprint. So by the end of a sprint, there's an opportunity. So when I talk to people, what should we do at the retrospective? So at least at the retrospective, talk about two aspects. Did you create a potentially valuable increment? Yes, no. If yes, what can we do to make it even better? If no, what could we do next sprint to actually be able to do that? And also talk about team engagement. How did we feel as a team? How was working together as a team? Maybe figure out why the same person is always late by the end of the daily Scrum. So by having that little retrospective moment by the end of every sprint, you have an opportunity to capture stuff and what is working, what is not working, and do something about it. So and use that and make it sort of an ongoing, a regular thing. You don't have to replace it with other stuff. And it's certainly not a performance review. And then work with Scrum Masters as one of those sort of modern managers, capture that feedback, then work maybe with things like HR, come up with a new term for HR because humans are not resources. So think about a new term for the department. And ask those people to sort of work with teams from a more facilitating attitude. And one of the biggest things is when I talk about stop managing for individuals and individual performance, that's one of the aspects that is a problem with performance reviews. Complexity, creative, difficult, unpredictable problems, nobody can tackle them on their own. You need some sort of teamwork. So at least you want to have some sort of team aspect in that sort of ongoing self-development process of people, that sort of whatever you would call review. So we'll at least have to tie in some sort of team aspect. But I believe there's a lot of large companies even that are totally eliminating performance reviews. It doesn't motivate people anyhow. It motivates some people, but for me, it doesn't work. It's sort of like deadlines. I know that some people work really well under deadlines. I paralyze under deadlines. I can't stand them. I perform a lot better without deadlines. So why would you go for that one sort of way of working, one way of thinking, and impose that on people?
It's like you say,
just eliminate
the deadlines don't motivate, right? So they don't motivate, so they don't get the engagement because you're not motivated by the concept of a deadline. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, brilliant. I am going to call it there on the questions. Unfortunately, we've got about 5 minutes. Gives me enough time just to wrap it up. But people can, if they've got other questions, can they can reach out to you.
Yeah,
Is there other ways to do you want to? How can people reach you? Is there stuff on your site? Because you blog, you share quite a lot of content. Do you want to say a little bit more about coming up?
So last year I participated in about 30 of these sort of online meetups. And whenever I get one of the recordings, I'll put them on my YouTube channel. I write a lot on my blog, so yeah, have a look.
And you recently released a paper as well, didn't you? I kind of saw something on LinkedIn you posted. It was
I just
a kind of treatment of it was kind of like the history of Scrum a little bit, wasn't it?
yeah, that's right. It's something I did a while ago. It's called this is a paper.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I called it Scrum: A Brief History of a Long-Lived Hype. Just building on the idea a little bit that Scrum is 25 years old. So let's stop calling it a hype. Something that's 25 years old is no longer a hype. But it's also the idea, look at the past to help us think about the future. I believe with Scrum we've got a bright future ahead of us, but there's so much untapped potential in Scrum. Certainly in the people aspect, the fact that it's all about human beings and engagement.
Brilliant. That's a lovely place to leave it. Listen, Gunther, thanks for that. It was absolutely wonderful to hear your insights as ever. I think I'm sure everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think it warms us up for the year ahead for sure. So thank you for taking the time and thanks for joining us. And I'm going to give you a little round of applause because I'm unmuted. I'm sure everybody else is giving you a virtual one there. I can see people clapping.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. And yeah, it was great to have Martin on as well. I know you know Martin, and I think we've also been joined by Tobias Mayer as well this evening. I don't know if Tobias is still on, so that's wonderful to have the three of you on, and Martin and Tobias.
I'm still here. I'm listening.
Hello, sir. Good to see you. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It was a wonderful way to kick off the year. Just by way of a few updates for you, we've got a lot of great stuff coming up over the next few months. Donald and I have been busy building our event program for 2021. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll be joined by Miles Hopkins, who's somebody I've got to know very well through the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. So he and I are both trustees of that. So he'll be joining us next week to talk about, not next week, week after, talk about business agility. So that'll be a good one to look at for. So he's joining us from South Africa. And then after that, we're into Feb, and we'll be doing 2 events in support of the festival, Agile 20 Reflect. So I'm really chuffed about that. And our first one is a panel discussion, which Tobias is one of our panelists, alongside Joanna Rothman, Lisa Atkins, and Dan Vacanti. So that promises to be a special evening. I'm sure there'll be a lot of great chat and debate. So I look forward to that. And then 2 weeks after that, we are hosting Natal Dyke, who's going to do a session for us on her work in the space of Agile HR. So you've got that to look forward to as well, which should be great. I'm going to be hosting numerous events over the course of February for Agile 20 Reflect, and I'm also talking at one. So yeah, feel free to, I did share the URL earlier, so feel free to go and have a look and see what else you can find. There's already 140 events over the course of February in the programme. So I'm sure there's something there that will be of interest to you. And Donald and I have already got a lot of plans for what we hope to do beyond Feb. So we've got some really good stuff lined up for March and April, which we'll start to publish fairly soon. So thanks again for joining. Lovely to see you all. Great start to the year, and look forward to the year ahead. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be. And we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, folks. All the best.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you. Thank you, Tata, together.
Thanks, everyone.
Good work. Bye now.
Thank you.
Good night.